Happy 100th episode of Bills by the Numbers, where we let the stats tell you where the Bills are at. We're presented by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Coming up, how is this roster going to take shape when it's reduced to 53? And how will the lengthy injury prognoses impact those decisions? ESPN's Mina Kimes joins us to talk Bills season outlook. And as always, we'll have our one burning question. Keep your eyes out for the Turk. Glad you could join us here on Bills by the Numbers, our celebratory 100th episode. Bills Hall of Famer Steve Tasker, Bills insider Chris Brown with you. And in these three things this week, we discuss what has happened to Buffalo's roster with less than a week before final cuts. Thing number one, Steve, which of the long-term injuries could be the most challenging to replace for the Bills at the outset of the season? Mitch Trubisky, Marquez Valdes-Scantling, or Quintin Morris?
Yeah, I'm going to go against what I usually say on the regular daily show. I think Mitch Trubisky might be the toughest one.
Really?
Yeah. They got everybody is looking for a quarterback that can play, and they're hard to find. Trubisky's at least been in the league constantly. Guys like DiNucci and Brown. They've been in and out of the league, popping in and around and traveling. Right. And while they probably bring something to the table, I think Trubisky's the one guy who, when you're a guy like Josh, you need that guy to help you get ready. That relationship is key. And there's just nobody in that room now that has that relationship with Josh like Trubisky did.
I would like to think he could still help in that fashion with a bum knee and
Absolutely.
Just sit in the room with him. I would hope.
Absolutely, but I doubt he'll be on the sidelines.
That's a good point.
So
they don't want a gimpy-kneed guy getting
that
hit
to
by
me is the hardest one to replace. But I'll say this: I don't know that it's that critical to the success of the team. I think it might be critical to Josh's comfort level. I don't think it'll markedly affect Josh's ability to win games. But I think on game day, you want the guy to be as comfortable as you can, and having your boy there makes it that way. But I think that's the most difficult one, just because of the relationship that's involved in getting your number one guy ready.
I went with Quintin Morris here because of all the things that he does: special teams, blocking on offense, a move tight end at times, 12 personnel when you're going blocking, who knows, maybe even 13, depending on what Joe Brady has up his sleeve this season. And I don't know that any of the other tight ends on the roster can do all of the things that Quintin Morris does. Right. I would almost expect Reggie Gilliam to serve in Quintin Morris's capacity if we get to the regular season and Morris is on IR or whatever decision they make roster-wise for him for the interim before putting him back on the roster when he's healthy. Zach Davidson can't do all the things that Quintin Morris does. Trey McKitty can't do all the things that he does. Dawson Knox is probably the guy that comes closest to doing all. He's a Swiss Army knife at tight end.
Right, and they use him everywhere. He catches the ball extremely well. But you're right. Davidson, McKitty, I don't think are as physical in the run game as Morris is. Certainly they don't have a history with Josh like Morris does. Morris has really...
It's a sneaky important role.
Yes, it is. And I would agree with you. It's going to be hard to find a guy like that. But I don't think you switch one for one. You
piecemeal it together.
Reggie Gilliam does a little bit of it. Davidson does a little bit of it. That kind of thing.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. Thing number two, with the total time on task lost to injuries at wide receiver, safety, and linebacker, which position do you think appears most vulnerable from an experience standpoint when they go out on the field week one?
I think it's got to be safety. Not only do you have a new player like Cole Bishop, man, that guy, now that he is back on the field, you still have over 2.5 weeks before your first game here. You've got a couple, which is plenty of time to get him up to speed. Although he hasn't played in a preseason game and probably won't this week either in this last one. He's got plenty of time to get ready, but he doesn't have any experience.
Yeah.
Mike Edwards, no reps in training camp. He's got the same kind of amount of time to get up. They'll be up and running, but they don't have the experience playing together with the defense, taking reps. They just don't have it. And I think that's, when you're talking about the level of where they were a year ago with the two veterans back there, that's got to be one of the things you look at and saying, wow, I don't know how those guys are going to mesh.
Yeah.
Let alone mesh and let alone their ability and play well.
Yeah, I would tend to think it's safety too. It has been a series of fits and starts for who's in there and who's not, and it wasn't just Bishop and Edwards who have been hurt. Hamlin missed some time coming out of the Pittsburgh game. So it's been a revolving door at that position, and Taylor Rapp's trying to get on the same page with whoever his starting partner is going to be, and it's hard to know who that's going to be. We're 2 weeks from the season. So, yeah, I would have to agree. I would say it's safety just from the standpoint of the items that you mentioned, in addition to how is that guy going to know how to play off the other guys in his secondary on given calls.
Taylor Rapp is kind of the lifeline there at safety. He has played extremely well, and we've commented on the Daily Show how much of a different dude he looks like this year.
Yes.
And that helps. But you're right. All those guys missing all that time is really the issue. Cam Lewis, Kareem Jackson, Mike Edwards, all these guys, Burgess, Delaney, Kendall Williamson.
Yeah.
It's you don't know who's going to be there at the end, but Bishop and Edwards and Rapp and Hamlin, you think
those are your guys.
Those are your guys. And then who's it going to be? Cam Lewis.
Cam Lewis is your swing guy.
You know? I don't know. So we'll see. But it's a position that even after training camp, we just don't know about.
Yeah. Thing number 3, what part of the team can best keep them in the contender category until some of these positions get healthy? Who's going to hold down the fort in the early part of the season here while some of these positions get healthy?
Generally speaking, to me, it's going to be the offense. I think the offense, I've said it and said it and said it. I think this offense is going to hum. I think they're going to be really good. Their offensive line is big, deep, talented, athletic. They're really good up front. Their running back room seems full of guys who can get it done. Their wide receivers with Kincaid, and I say wide receivers and then say a tight end, but Kincaid is their number one target guy. Cook and his emergence, Khalil Shakir, Curtis Samuel is going to be a dynamite player for this team, and of course,
when healthy,
and of course, Keon Coleman is a physical matchup problem for teams. So, I think the offense is the one thing that you can kind of count on that's going to look really good out of the gate, and it'll allow those defenders to get healthy and get acclimated.
I'm going to get even more specific with that because I do believe it is on the offensive side of the ball. They're going to have to carry this team in the early going with all the injuries on defense. But more specifically, the run game and the offensive line, I think, is going to have to be a component of how this team wins games early in the season by controlling the clock and not putting as much of a play burden on the defense, where the defense isn't out there for 70 plays. They're out there maybe for 56 or 55 plays because the run game's so successful. They're sustaining drives. They're going 12 plays, 14 plays, not 4 or 5 plays on offense. And by virtue of that, the defense is on the field less and can kind of get themselves up to speed without the burden being on them to win a football game.
Yeah, and I think that's right. This is a team that I think is really going to be difficult to get off the field offensively. I think they're going to be able to grind out first downs and just stay on the field. Shorten games. I'm not saying they're going to turn into a 1957 Vince Lombardi, Packers team where they're going to hand it off and run the ball in the alley and all that. They're going to air it out, no question. You don't do anything else with Josh Allen as your quarterback. But in games where you get into the second half, at any point in the second half with a 10-point lead, which this offense could give you, man, oh man, the other team is going to run out of possessions to win that game because you're going to be able to grind it out. I think that's an excellent point that this team is just going to be really, like always, it's going to be really hard to beat. Yeah. And you're never going to get out in front and front run on the Buffalo Bills.
Time now to welcome in our guest on this special 100th episode of Bills by the Numbers. It's ESPN NFL analyst and senior writer and host of the Mina Kimes Show. Here is Mina Kimes. All right, Mina, thanks for joining us. And the reason we got you on is because we want to kind of take a 10,000-foot view of the Bills. We kind of suffer from Bills myopia here, so we're trying to get a national perspective. So what would you say are the questions at the top of your list about this Bills team going into the regular season?
I think a couple come to mind. I'm interested in seeing what this Joe Brady offense looks like after a full offseason with some of the additions that they've made, because we kind of got a glimpse of it right after he took over as offensive coordinator in the second half of the year. That emphasis on running the ball was probably the biggest, most dramatic change, the way they use the receivers a little bit. But I expect it to change even more this season. I've been very interested in reports coming out of camp about, increased use of motion, maybe different formations, different personnel groupings, but we really won't know until we see it on the field. So that's something I'm very intrigued by and kind of excited for. I think I'm a bit more optimistic about it, and maybe this Bills group of skill players than some of the other national media. I don't know. I don't want to paint with too broad of a brush. And then defensively, it's that schematically, I don't expect to be too different. You guys can tell me if I'm wrong, but I'm interested in seeing some of these young players take another leap. I think for this Bills defense to continue playing at the level we've seen in recent years, despite some serious injuries, there's players like Greg Rousseau, who's been awesome, but can he take that leap to become one of the best pass rushers in the NFL? That's what I want to see.
Yeah, we've got certainly some question marks over there, not because of nobody has a resume, but certainly because we haven't seen him do it here. Mike Edwards, who was a starter for the Kansas City Chiefs, Cole Bishop, who was a highly touted rookie coming out, Taylor Rapp, who's been in the system this preseason and for a full year last year. Some of these, the changeover from Micah Hyde, Jordan Poyer, and then they've had a rash of minor injuries that have kept all of these guys from playing together. How long do you give it before you say, yeah, it's going to work, or we might have made a mistake?
Well, I think the benefit of having what I think is still going to be a top 10 offense is you do put your defense in good situations largely. And if the Bills defense can continue to defend the run at a decent level, I think that the potential issues in coverage, and we'll see how that plays out with the spine of the defense being as young as it is, can be mitigated. There might be fewer growing pains than you might see with other teams that are undergoing such a like getting so young so quickly at those positions. I'm optimistic though, because I think this cornerback group is kind of slept on, and I think this defensive front, like I said, Greg Rousseau's been good, and Oliver's been great, but I think that all of those players in front, and then you got AJ Epinesa as well, rushing the passer. I think that they can play at, pardon me, I think that they can actually improve in a way that maybe counteracts some of the issues you have with the change in the back end.
Yeah, and I want to dovetail off of what you mentioned about Joe Brady's offense with this question, and it's kind of a two-parter, but after watching Joe Brady run the ball 52% of the time down the stretch last season after he took over as OC, and I realize it's a little skewed by that Dallas Monday night game when they ran the tar out of the ball. Do you think that could be his MO this year? Because part two of my question there is, we know this league is cyclical, and I don't think this is just a Jim Harbaugh coming back into the league thing, but with so many light boxes these days and linebackers running 225 pounds, I'm wondering if we're going to see the tendency vacillate back towards the run game a little bit more than we've seen in recent years.
I think what's key, and I think Joe Brady knows this and will show it, is running the ball when it's advantageous to do so. They correctly identified that the Cowboys defense couldn't stop the run. They literally ran out of linebackers, right? That was a very light defense. So they said, we're going to come in and we're going to pound the rock. And it was the right decision. But there will be defenses that they face that are stouter up front but have issues in coverage. And if you have Josh Allen, there's no reason not to throw the ball over the field. So I think it's going to be game to game. But what I'm interested in seeing, guys, is you built this great rushing attack. It was, by the way, the Bills were great at running the ball before Joe Brady. They just did it more, right? But James Cook is excellent, obviously, with Josh Allen's back there. That adds another element that they did lean into more. What I'd like to see this year is kind of, and I've talked about this a little bit on my pod, building the passing attack off of that, a little bit more of an integration of the run and the pass with RPOs and play action. I think there's the potential there, especially with the tight ends that the Bills have, to be a real problem when defenses key to stop the run against them, and I think that's going to happen a lot.
One of the things we've seen from Sean McDermott is that even in down years, they're really hard to beat. It's been 40, tied an NFL record 40 regular season games since they've lost a game by more than 6 points. I mean, they're just hard to beat. Certainly, they don't win all of them, but they do. You don't run off and leave this team. If that continues to be the case, is that something that is that you can take into account as being part of the plus side of a roster, even though it turns over? This has always been a roster, and a lot of it is because of Josh Allen taking snaps. But this is a hard coaching staff and a hard roster to get out in front of and stay there.
Is an incredibly underrated coach. Especially what he has done with that defense, the level of adversity that they've faced, the injuries that they've suffered, the key positions over the last couple of years. And the fact that I will say, hold up my hand. I constantly expected this defense to just the bottom to fall off when they would lose, you lose your Matt Milano, you lose years ago, your Trey Whites, whatnot, and yet it never did. And I think that's a real testament to the work that he and his staff have done with some of these young players, not just the young players that they've drafted, but players coming in like a Russell Douglas and playing at a high level for them. They communicate so well on the back end. They fit I just think he's a really, really underrated coach in that regard. And obviously, Allen helps paper over a lot of things. But I think that combination of him coaching that defense and then the quarterback who's, a true elevator is a pretty difficult combination to beat.
ESPN's Mina Kimes from the Mina Kimes Show and podcast. Be sure to check it out. Thanks for the time, Mina. As always, enjoy the upcoming season.
Thanks, Mina.
Bye, guys.
All right, good conversation there with Mina. We shift to the numbers game where Steve will be quizzed on previous 53-man roster iterations. Are you ready for this one, Steve? This is interesting.
What's an iteration?
Whatever the roster looks like in a given year. So question number one, Steve. What position carried the highest number of players on Buffalo's initial 53-man roster last year? And I will tell you, we're grouping, defensive line together, offensive line together.
I think it is. I think it's the defensive line. I think they carried like 10 guys on it last year.
You're close, but that would be incorrect.
It's the offensive line then.
No, it's defensive back.
You're
11
kidding.
total. Yeah, 11 total.
I don't know what I'm doing.
Question number two.
Dope.
Since 2006, what is the highest number of tight ends the Bills have carried on a 53-man roster?
5.
Nailed it, Steve. 5 is the number. It happened back in 2015. I'm going to give you the names, okay? You ready for this? We're going down memory lane here with this one. Charles Clay, Marquise Gray, Chris Gregg, a former draft choice, Matthew Mulligan, and Nick O'Leary. O'Leary was eventually released to reduce that number to 4. Question number 3. When was the last time the Bills carried more than one kicker on the roster with their initial 53-man roster?
1990.
No, there was one sooner than that.
More recent than that.
Yeah.
I would say 98.
No, it's a lot more recent than that.
I don't know who it is.
It's 2015.
Oh, really?
Again,
Who were the kickers?
Dan Carpenter was hurt
Oh.
coming into the regular season, so Jordan Gay was on the roster and made the 53, but then didn't do so well and was eventually replaced by veteran Billy Cundiff in October. Were you thinking of the days when they had Cole Ford as the kickoff specialist?
Well,
those were during your
my
days.
It wasn't Cole Ford, it was Brad Del Wiso
Yeah.
and Scott Norwood.
Cole Ford was on the roster too as a kickoff specialist at one point in time
not
too.
during my time, I don't think.
Okay, it was after you.
It was after
okay.
I was gone.
All right, fair enough. So maybe it was that 98 team you're talking about.
I'm guessing.
The years meld together for me as much as they do for you, Steve.
Decades
Believe
meld
me.
together for me.
Question number 4. When was the last time the Bills carried 7 receivers on their initial 53-man roster? 7 wideouts.
2023.
It was not last year. I was getting it. It was 6 last year. Yeah.
It was close.
It is recent.
Yeah, I'll say 2020.
Oh, you're so close. It's 2021.
They're all running
Stephon
together.
Diggs, Gabe Davis, Cole Beasley, Jake Kumaro, Isaiah McKenzie, Emmanuel Sanders, and your friend and mine, Marquez Speedy Stevenson.
Oh, yeah.
So 7 receivers on the 21 roster initially. Pretty crazy.
That was recent.
So it has happened before. Bills fans, get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Just download the app to play any way you want. Plus, with live betting, you'll get updated odds on games that have already started. Best of all, you get paid your winnings fast. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the Buffalo Bills. Okay, with the deadline on the cut to 53, Steve, coming on August 27th at 4 p.m., we need to go over the roster position by position and see what we think the numbers will be. We begin on defense. How many linebackers do we believe this team will carry in light of the injuries?
I think it's going to be 6.
6.
Yeah, I think it's going to be 6. I think it's going to be Dorian Williams, Terrell Bernard.
Okay, I would agree.
I think it's going to be Milano will be on the 53 just to then switch
Well,
over.
no, you can
He'll go down.
IR him on the cut to 53,
Right,
Steve.
exactly.
So you can IR him immediately.
Oh, so he's going to get IR'd. So I think it's going to be Williams, Bernard, Ulofoshio, Andreessen, Morrow, and Spector.
Okay. I think it's going to be one less than that. I think it's going to be 5. And I think that the decision is going to have to come down to Morrow and Spector. Spector is hurt right now with the calf injury, so they do have an out there and can IR him too, designate to return. That's an option.
I think Spector's inability to be available has hurt him. I think that's the reason Joe Andreessen's in. Spector, if they go 5, I agree with you. Spector's the guy that's not going to.
And they can IR him and keep him around by doing that and buy some time, and then see how things shake out with the 5 they do have, because you do know eventually, God willing, you're getting Milano back sometime in December. So I think they go low there with 5. And that's the decision they have to make. And then, through the first 4 weeks of the season, if Nicholas Morrow isn't performing like they want, well, okay, Spector's healthy, get him on the roster, that kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, special teams is going to be a factor in that. You need some athletes to go out there and play.
So you don't have Deion Jones.
Right.
I wonder, I think Deion Jones may sneak on there. I'm interested to see what the decisions are, but there are some interesting ones with linebacker 4 and 5 for sure. How many defensive linemen, Steve?
I've got 5 or 6 edge rushers and 4 or 5 tackles. I think probably 5 tackles.
So
and
what's
5
your
edge.
total number? 10? 10 is your
10
number.
is my number, yeah.
10 is my number too. I think they're going to go 6 and 4. 6 ends, 4 DTs. And the reason I say that is I think you have to keep Kingsley Jonathan and Javon Solomon on this roster as pass rushers 5 and 6.
Smoot, as an edge guy, gives you the ability he can move down inside and finish a game or whatever and get you out of a game, or maybe even give you one full game as a rotationary.
And then just put a couple of DTs on the practice squad, like an Elianku or somebody like that.
Right. So that I think, 10
But I think they go heavy there, 10. Yeah. How many defensive backs, and what is your breakdown between corners and safeties?
I go 9 defensive backs, 4 safeties, 5 corners. Really? Because you got to play 3 corners anyway. And
right, because they play nickel.
And you'll go 4 safeties in that mix. Now you'll get a guy like somebody who can slide between the two, like take your pick. But that's what I think. I think it's gonna be 9.
I'm going even fatter than that. I'm going 11. I think they're going to keep 6 corners on this roster. I think Daquan Hardy has made the roster as a return man and played very well against Pittsburgh at the corner position on the outside. So I think my corners are basically Benford, Douglas, Elam, Ingram, and then
Taron.
it's Taron, and then it's Daquan Hardy. And then I have Cam Lewis as one of my 5 safeties, Bishop, Edwards, Rapp, Hamlin, Lewis.
So
I have 11 DBs.
Okay, 11 DBs. And you
so
had
my defense has
you had 5 linebackers.
Right. So I have a total of 26 on defense.
Yeah, okay.
Because I'm only going to go 24 on offense in a second here. So we go to the offensive side of the ball. Probably 2 quarterbacks. Mitch Trubisky, probably IR. and they bring on a second quarterback. So here's the question. Is that second quarterback going to be a new player that's cut loose from another club, Steve? And not Ben
That's a
DiNucci,
possibility.
not Anthony Brown?
It may be, but I've said it before. It may be, and it may be somebody that Josh is better along, gets like Kyle Allen may come back or somebody who's been here before, but that's probably on the table. But even so, that's fine.
Yeah. I think it's better than a 50-50 shot that they pluck somebody that gets cut off the waiver wire and bring them in, especially if they think
it's probably
if they
better than
believe
50-50,
because I really believe they're going to IR Trubisky and let him get healthy, whatever, 4 weeks, because that's the minimum on IR. So now that's the first month of the season. That's a long stretch to go with a guy that got here last week in Ben DiNucci or Anthony Brown. And I realize they're probably looking for somebody that knows this system, whether it's a Case Keenum who might get cut in Houston or a Kyle Allen who may get cut in Pittsburgh with Russell Wilson and Justin Fields expected to make the roster. So if they can find somebody like that, I think that person is back here and the backup quarterback effectively for probably the first month of the season.
Right.
All right, so running back likely to be 4, counting Reggie Gilliam. What about wide receiver and tight end? How do those two positions break down for you?
I've got 3 tight ends. Because
Morris is probably IR also.
I got Davidson, Kincaid, and Knox. And then 6 wide receivers.
Okay, I need to hear the names for this position.
Well, it'd be Keon Coleman, Curtis Samuel, Khalil Shakir, Mac Hollins. Then it's going to be probably, I'm thinking it might be Hamler, but it's probably going to be
Shavers. And who's your 6?
It might be, it's either Isabella.
You're wrestling.
That's it. I don't.
See, and for the very reason you are wrestling with,
I don't say KJ Hamler maybe because of the return.
Right. But, Isabella has that also in his bag.
Yeah.
The reason you're hesitating is the only reason I'm going 5 at wideout, and I'm still going to go 4 at tight end. I'll put Trey McKitty on the roster to start, and then when Morris is healthy, I put him down on the practice squad and send him through waivers. Yeah. I think this offense is going to run more 12 personnel than we realize, and I think they need 4 tight ends on the active roster. So I'm going to go 5 receivers, and I'm going to go 4 tight ends. Trey McKitty is my holdover 4th tight end.
Throw some guys
until Morris is healthy and off of IR. That's
put some wide receivers on the practice squad.
Yeah. You put Shorter and Isabella. Maybe you keep grooming Shorter. I mean, if you liked Hamler enough, put him on the practice squad as a veteran or Isabella, whoever you like better. And I think off you go with that. I think that's kind of the way you go there. Offensive line, where does that number end up?
I've got 9 or 10 offensive linemen, depending on how it falls. I'll probably take however many we've got here. We've got 4 running backs, 5 wides or 6 wides, and 4 tight ends. I'd go like 9 or 10.
Yeah, I've got 9. I've got 9 there. The question is, what do you do with some of those interior swing players? Because I think your offensive tackles are probably Brown and Dawkins, Van DeMark and Grable, the rookie. Right. Those are probably your 4 tackles. Okay, now you got to figure out the interior spots. And I mean, aside from Edwards and Torrance, the starters, you got Alec Anderson in that mix. Because now you're at 4, 5, 6. McGovern 7. So now you got 2 spots left. So is it Van Pran, Granger, and Anderson? Because that's probably who I have.
Right.
Or do you like anybody else better?
Well, that's the thing. Do you take Van Pran, Granger instead of Will Clapp? Or do you take, does Lyle Collins come in and make it?
Yeah, I think Lyle Collins is a casualty here. I think you go young. I think you go Anderson. I'm kind of with you, though.
Tylen Grable looked pretty good. Looked really athletic.
You're not getting him through waivers and on the practice squad. He's too athletic.
Unfortunately, I think you're right. But if I could, I'd keep 10 of them.
Right. I went fat on defense, so I only had 24 spots on offense, so I'm only going 9 there.
Yeah.
And I'll just practice squad a couple of guys, see if Will Clapp will take a veteran practice squad spot and just do that for depth on the interior. And, if there's Richard Garage can play tackle, you put him on the practice squad again, keep him developing and work it that way so you have some depth there that you can call up if needed. And then 3 special teamers. I don't think they'll have to clip Reed Ferguson initially and then re-sign him like they've done before, because these injuries, I think, are going to provide the proper player designation so they don't have to resort to that, right? I mean, you're probably IRing Trubisky, you're IRing Milano, you're probably IRing Morris, and then depending on how jumbled you feel at receiver, you can even arguably IR Samuel with the toe injury if you really want to. I don't know that they want to do that. I think they'd rather get Samuel on the field as soon as he's healthy. So maybe he's injured at the start of the year and misses the opener, but can play in week 2, hopefully.
Well, if it's a question that he can play in week 2, you almost say you do IR him.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, and
because he can't play for 4 weeks if you IR him.
Well, I know, but if he's going to miss 2 anyway,
what's 2 more?
By that you're going to have you're going to work around it.
Okay,
you have a chance to get around it. Plus, with the stuff you can do with your roster, this is at the beginning of the season, you got 90 guys to choose from. You can get in there and overcome a guy's absence. But a month into the season, you only have 53 that you can work from. Now you've got 90. So you can, at the beginning of the season, you can kind of smooth over that skill set with a couple of guys hanging around rather than just the one or just the 53 that you have to pick from in a month.
I get it.
See what I mean? So at the beginning, if you did this, if this was the case, like if you could IR a guy for 4 weeks or 6 weeks during the regular season, but you only have 53 guys to work from and the free agent market. Now you got your whole roster. You got 90 guys. You know what he wants to do. You know what you want to use him for, and you know who can cover for him in a pinch. So you keep that on the roster and you IR him for a month. Because of the 90 guys you have that slack, it's easier at the beginning of the season.
Yeah. Now, with the roster discussion complete, we ask our one burning question. What player on the bubble, Steve, do you believe is too much of a risk to put on the practice squad and try to clear through waivers? Who would be your...
Besides Joe Andreessen?
Besides Joe Andreessen.
Yeah, I think Joe Andreessen might be the guy.
He might be.
He
showed out too much in the Pittsburgh game.
KJ Hamler, you're probably going to lose if you put him out there. You're going to lose.
I don't think that's as catastrophic.
No, it's not.
But, you think about all the late draft picks for the Bills.
Cedric Van Pran-Granger.
Tylen Grable, Daquan Hardy. These guys, Javon Solomon, those guys are not making it through waivers to your practice squad. You have to put them on the roster. They've done enough in the preseason, put enough preseason tape out there where another pro personnel department worth its salt is going to be like, get me that kid.
Yeah.
And we've seen far too many late-round draft choices get plucked off this team's practice squad over the years.
Right. Yeah, and they would. So you can take any of those guys. Van Pran-Granger, there's no way he makes it through
with the dearth of offensive line talent around the
Everybody's
league.
looking for offense, and he's too good.
3-year starter in the SEC.
And then you got, like you said, you've got Daquan Hardy, who has played really well and has a return ability and outside corner. Now, granted, he played well against Pittsburgh, who can't throw the football, but he was covering people up. He was playing well. There's plenty of names. Joe Andreessen, who is
I don't think you can get him through.
They're
anymore.
making T-shirts about that guy already.
Yeah,
I mean, come on.
Joe.
So there's a plenty of guys, and I'll say this too. For as much turnover and the ringing of Bills fans were clutching their pearls about all the guys that are gone and the turnover and the new faces we got. Brandon Beane put together what looks like a really good roster. Now, they got to stay healthy, as we all know.
And it all has to get pulled together by the coaching staff.
But I'll tell you what, kudos to this coaching staff, scouting staff, and personnel staff. This is a roster you think, coming into this game, this regular season, they're going to win some football games.
With the cap constraints they were working with, especially after the Diggs trade and eating money like that. Yeah, the roster looks pretty good going into the regular season. If it can get a little healthier, it'll look even better. Our closing figure this week deals with preseason rushing yardage. The Bills, heading into their final preseason game, ranked 4th in the league in preseason rushing yards, averaging 122 yards a game. The last time they ranked higher than that in the preseason was in Sean McDermott's first season as head coach. They averaged just over 134 yards, again, ranked 4th in the league for the preseason as well. That's it for this edition. Be sure to subscribe on your podcast platform of choice so you're notified when the next episode is out, because when you need to know about the Bills, you need to check Bills by the Numbers. For Steve Tasker, I'm Chris Brown. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you next week, everybody.